Hello, I'm going over the honors assessment for portion conversion. And so this is the quiz that we just took on 1030. And this is the front page of the quiz. And please always check this out and make sure that you actually read it. I like to put your actual score on this page so that you have it there. I'm not sure what Miss Wilbert is doing in terms of that, but this is where you'll find the actual score. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the problem number 1. I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller there. I don't need to see that much of myself. Okay, so on the 100 block at the right, shade in 42 hundredths. Write this as a fraction, decimal, and percent. Write your fraction in lowest common terms. Simplify. All of the possible points are here on the side, so you can check mark them off as you do them. So the first thing is shading correctly. I want 42 hundredths. For the shading, I'm going to go ahead and use highlighter mode. And 42 hundredths, I have to color in 42 of these. So there's 10, 20, 30, 40, and we know it's not going to possibly be exact, but 42 would look about like that. Okay, so I've done the first part there. I'm going to go ahead and change my color, and I'm going to put a little mark next to that because I should get a point for that if I did it correctly. 1 point for the correct fraction. All right, so for the fractions, I'm going to go ahead and use a text box. If you actually wrote it out, that's totally fine. You might have written 42 over 100. I find that the text box is a little bit easier to read, so I'm going to go ahead and use the text box. And when you do a fraction in the text box, it looks 42 with a forward slash out of 100. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and raise that a tiny bit so it's on the line or close to the line. All right, so I have that part now. I'm going to go ahead and mark 1 point, but then the next part says 1 point for the lowest common term fraction. So that means taking this 42 hundredths and simplifying it to its lowest common term. Well, right away, I'm noticing that they're both even numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and divide both by the giant 1 of 2 over 2. So 2 over 2. I don't have a fun stylus. I'm using a mouse. It's kind of weird. So 42 divided by 2 is 21. Divided by, or well, technically, yes, over 50. Now the factors, I want to see if I can simplify this even more. So the factors of 21 are 1, 3, because 3 times 7, so 3, 7, and 21. Those are the only ways to get to 21. So the factors are 1, 3, 7, and 21. Does 50 share any of those factors? It shares 1, but that doesn't simplify anything. It doesn't, 50 doesn't, 3 doesn't go into 50, 7 doesn't go into 50, and 21 doesn't go into 50. So the simplified fraction in lowest common terms of 42 hundredths is 21 over 50. Okay, so now I have that. I can mark that point off. 1 point for the correct decimal. So the correct decimal in this case, how we write 42 hundredths is like that. And then as a percent, we write it as 42, and then we use the percent symbol. I'm going to bring that up just a little bit. There we go. So that is to get full points on this slide would be, it would look like this. All right. So that's the first one. The second slide, or the slide 3 technically, looks like this. And we start with 35 hundredths. So I'm going to go ahead and write that as a percent to start with. So that's 35% would be what's in that box. Then as a fraction, it would be 35 over 100. And again, I have the marks over here, so I can mark what I've done. Let's see, did I I'm going to have to put something in for each of these to be able to mark off that part there. So I'm going to just wait on marking those off till the end. So, so I'm going to move this over, and I'm also going to make it a little bit smaller because it doesn't need to fit in that box, but I want to simplify because 35 hundredths, both of those are divisible by 5. So we can take the giant one, 35 over 100, almost forgot the 5, over 100, and we can divide both by 5. So the giant one of 5/5. And 35 divided by 5 is 7. 100 divided by 5 is 20. So I'm going to look at the factors of 7 to see if I can go any further. And the only factors of 7 are 1 and 7. And 1 goes into 20, but that's not going to change the fraction at all. It's not going to simplify. And 7 doesn't go into it. So we're done. So I'm going to go back to this one. And I'm going to go ahead and show it this way instead. Equals 7 20ths. So now I have it shown in its simplified version. And then for writing it, I would see something like you could either use 7 out of 20, or you could have written 35 out of 100, or you might have written 7 out of 20. Either one of those would be correct, and you would have gotten points for either one of those. All right. The second one is 16% as a decimal. That would be 0.16, or how we actually say that in mathematically, is 16 hundredths. And I like to do that spitting at the end of the TH to make sure you know it's not hundreds, because that would be different. 16 hundredths. All right. I'm going to go ahead and do the words next. 16 out of 100 is one way that we can say this. And that means that in fraction form, it's 16 over 100. Both of those are even numbers. So we're going to think about what we can divide by. And 16 is an even number and 100 is an even number. So we're going to do 16 100ths divided by 2, because they're both even numbers, 2 halves. So we end up with 8. Whoa, that's a funny 8. 8/50ths. Okay, but here's the thing. 8 is an even number and 50 is an even number. So we can divide it by the giant one of 2 halves again, because 8/50ths is not the simplest terms. And it says the lowest terms. We want to get it to its lowest term. So we're going to divide it by 2 halves again. And now we have 4 25ths. Let's double check. Let's see. We have an even number and we have an odd number. So we can't do by two halves again. So the factors of 4 are 1, 2, and 4. Well, 1 works for 25. 2 does not work for 25, and 4 doesn't work for 25. So we are now at its lowest term. And so, that was goofy. Let me try that again. So we had 16 over 100, which is equivalent to 4 25ths. So the simplest term would be 4 25ths. All right. So we could also say down here, we could say 4 out of 25 would also be correct. Okay, let's look at our points that we had available to us. 1 point each for each correct missing part. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got my 6 points there because I filled in something in each of the missing parts. 1 point for the correct fraction and lowest term. So I got an extra point there and an extra point there. So that was 2 extra points there. So that was 6 plus 2. I got my 8 total points. All right, next one. This one is a challenge. There are several ways to attack this problem, but probably the most logical way for me personally is to use a percent ruler, which is a weird thing for me because I never grew up using a percent ruler. That's something I learned as a 6th grade math teacher. So with the percent ruler, let me go to my writing. You have 0% on one end, and you have 100% on the other end. And in this case, we know that she has 30% completed. So we need to find out where 30% is. What I like to do is I like to mark my 50%. And 40, 30, 20, 10. 20, 30, 40. I might as well go ahead and make the whole percent ruler. So 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 to make this kind of small because otherwise it's going to crash into the 50%. 60, 70, 80. We're going to need the 80% for later on in the problem too. 90%. Okay, so the bottom part is the percent. And then the top part is what we know is whatever percent. We know that 9 items is the same as 30%. So 9 items is 30%. So how you can think about this is since we need to go to 80% and to 100% because we need to know how many items are on the whole test, it's going to be easiest if we just find out what 10% is. So if we have 9% at 30%, we're going to take 30% to get down to 10% is divided by 3. So 30 divided by 3 equals 10. So we need to do the same to the 9. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. So 10% is going to be 3. Then, so every 10% is going to be 3 more. So 3, 6, we start with 0. 0 problems is 0%. 3 problems gives you 10% complete. 6 problems gives you 20%. 9 gives you 30. If we skip counting, we've got 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. All right, so if we do a percent ruler, that's what it would look like. And now we can answer the question. How many items does she need to have to complete to move on? Well, if she needs 80% to complete the test, she needs 24. So I'm going to put this here. Jan needs to complete 24 problems to move on. And you could say in there 24 problems. I'm giving you more than what you had to put. Problems is 80% complete. Okay. And then the next part is how many items were on the test? Well, if 100% is the whole test, we now know that there were 30 items. There are 30 items on the whole test. All right, so there you go. That is how you solve it. Each one of those questions was worth 1 point each. And that is it. I hope you had a wonderful weekend and the Hawks won. So yeah, yay for the Hawks. All right, let's have a great week this week. Thanks. Bye.